Good afternoon, children. Welcome back to the online class in literature in English. In the last week, we had done 3 of the untouched poems. So today we will move on to the 4th poem, which has still not come in ICSE. And therefore, it is very important for the students, for you who are going to sit for ICSE in 2021. So we start with the poem Television by Roald Dahl. The first point that you will have to remember is that this poem, Television, is a prose poem. You will see in the poem, there are complete sentences as if you are reading a prose or a story. Then how does this prose become a poetry or a poem? The reason is the poet has used rhymes in order to give this prose the form and the effect of a poem. If you look at the first 2 lines, see, they end with learned, concerned. They rhyme. Therefore, we call it a prose poem or prose poetry. This poem was written in 1964 when the gadget that attracted the attention and addicted the children was the television. And therefore, this poem is talking about the ill effects of watching television on children, especially the minds of the children. Now let me tell you the tone of the poem. The tone of the poem is light. It is humorous. It is direct. And the tone also includes appealing, requesting, persuading, but the subject matter which the poem is dealing with is very, very serious. Where will we find this appeal, this request, this persuasion? We will see as we proceed with the poem. Another important feature you will notice in this poem is the use of capital letters, repetition, and use of certain phrases. Now, these have been purposely done by the poet for certain reasons. Generally, capital letters, repetitions, and this particular use of phrases which we will see, they are done in order to put stress or highlight what the poet wants to convey through the poem. That is why you have an ample use of capital letters, repetitions, and use of certain phrases. Those phrases here, I have written down 2 of them. I will explain them when we come to these phrases, when we do the poem line by line. Now let us first take up the poem line by line. As I was telling you, in this poem, the poet is addressing the British parents. But you can write that the poet is addressing the parents in general. And in the beginning of the poem, the tone of the poet is one of appeal, one of request. He is appealing or requesting the parents not to allow their children to watch television. Now look at the poem. The most important thing we have learned so far as children are concerned is never, never, never let them near your television set. Or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. The poet is addressing the parents. He is not using the first person I. He is using the plural we, because he is not the only one who knows about the ill effects of television watching on children. There are others also who know about it and don't like it. In these lines, the poet is making two appeals, two requests to the parents. He is telling the parents never to allow the children to watch television. And then he is saying the better option is not to have the television set installed or kept in the house at all. Obviously, if the television is not there, children will never get a chance to watch it. Again, you will notice this repetition. Never, never, never in the third line, and two nevers are in capital letters. Obviously, this has been done to stress and highlight the fact that parents should not allow the children to watch television. And most importantly, the repetition is giving the poem the tone of persuasion. The poet is persuading the parents not to allow the children to watch television and not to install the television in the house at all, if possible. Another thing you will notice, the word television has not been used here. Instead of the television, a word has been used, idiot. The television is like an idiot. That is why, you see, idiotic thing. It's a metaphor, meaning the television is compared to something that is idiotic, foolish, and stupid, from which we gain or learn nothing. Now move on to the next line, few lines. And in the next few lines, you will see there is a tone of disgust. Tone of disgust, because the poet is now going to tell us the ill effects of watching television on children. In almost every house we have been, we have watched them gaping at the screen. The poet is saying he has gone to many houses, and wherever he has gone, he has seen children unblinkingly watching and looking at the screen of the television. They are addicted to it. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. As I was telling you, look at the use of the phrase, loll and slop and lounge about. The point is, these children do nothing. They just sit there relaxed, and the only thing that they do is watch television. Basically, loll and slop and lounge, all the three words mean sit and watch. But they have been repeated again to put stress that the children do nothing except watch television. And they are so addicted to watching it that when they look at the television screen, their eyeballs seem to come out of their eye sockets. And then you have something quite humorous. Within the brackets, the poet is saying, last week in someone's place, we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. Now, eyeballs can never come out of the eye sockets and roll on the floor. That is not possible. The poet is exaggerating. He is telling something more than what is the fact. And I told you earlier that when something is exaggerated, you have a figure of speech called hyperbole. Dozen eyeballs on the floor. What is the poet trying to say? The children are so hooked and hypnotized and mesmerized and addicted to watching television that their eyeballs pop out of their sockets. Not only that, as if they are rolling on the floor. This is an exaggeration, but it shows how much the television affects the children and their mind and their psyche. They sit and stare and stare and sit until they are hypnotized by it. See, again, they sit and stare and stare and sit. Meaning what? They sit and look and sit. The same thing, sit and watch television, but see, the syntax or the arrangement of the phrase has been changed. Sit and stare, stare and sit, meaning they sit and watch television. Again, repetition to highlight and stress on the fact of the ill effects of watching television on children. And you will notice S, repetition, therefore the figure of speech, alliteration. They are hypnotized by the television. They are mesmerized by the television. They are addicted to watching television. Until they are absolutely drunk with all that shocking, ghastly junk. Their minds are drunk, meaning their minds are filled with the absolute junk or nonsense which they see. That means nothing constructive, nothing useful, nothing meaningful ever enter their minds when they watch television. It is absolute rubbish which fills their mind. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out of the sill. Now, the poet has changed that tone of disgust and is saying, yes, there are some good effects or positives about children watching television. What are they? Children keep still, meaning they remain seated in one place and watch television. They don't do anything else. They don't cause any mischief. They don't act naughtily. They don't do anything silly or wicked other than watch television. They never fight or kick or punch. They never fight amongst each other. They never kick each other. They never punch each other with their fists. They leave you free to cook the lunch. Mothers are free to cook the lunch without any disturbance or interference because the children are busy watching television. And wash the dishes in the sink. Household work can be done peacefully, without interference, without disturbance, because the mothers and the fathers don't need to keep an eye on the children because they would be seated in one place, glued to one place, watching television, and therefore they would not do anything else. Now comes what the poet is wanting to say. I told you, even though it is light and humorous in tone, but it is very direct. And what it is dealing with is very serious. That is why the poet is telling the parents, but did you ever stop to think, to wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved tot? The poet is saying, my dear parents, have you ever thought, have you ever wondered, has this question ever come to your mind that what television watching does to the child whom you love so much? Now, after asking this question to the parents, the poet is now going to give us and highlight the ill effects of watching television on children. And all these are again in capital letters to stress and to highlight. It rots the sense in the head, meaning when children watch television, other senses don't function, they only watch. The other senses lie unused. The brain doesn't think, the brain doesn't imagine, the mind doesn't function because the eyes are only watching and other senses are doing nothing. It kills imagination dead. children watch television, whatever they can see in front of their eyes, they don't need to imagine. So their imaginative power comes to an end. When you read a book, when you are reading through the words, you are framing pictures in your mind. You are using your imagination to create that scene or scenario, whatever you are reading. But when you watch television, the scene is there right in front of your eyes. What Tom looks like, what Jerry looks like, what Doraemon looks like is there in front of your eyes. You don't need to imagine how they look. But when you read from the description, you form pictures in your mind using your imagination. So when you watch television, your imagination does not work. And due to inactivity, the imagination becomes dead. It clogs and clutters up the mind. Watching television blocks the mind of the children. It confuses the mind of the children simply because they don't think, they don't imagine, their creativity is gone, they only see, they don't do anything. It makes a child so dull and blind. If a child doesn't think, if a child doesn't imagine, if a child does not create, the mind becomes dull, useless, boring. The child becomes stupid, idiotic, and he becomes blind. Now, here is an irony. They are watching television, then how can they be blind? The word blind means they become blind to their imaginative powers, they become blind to their thinking powers, they become blind to their creativity. He can no longer understand a fantasy, a fairy land. You know, when children are watching television, they are seeing a fantasy land, a fairy land. They are seeing something which does not exist in reality. So the point is, when they watch these imaginative worlds on TV, they think they exist. And therefore, the child cannot find out the difference. He cannot differentiate between what is a reality and what is imagination. The real life and the real life for the child becomes one. Therefore, for him to distinguish between what is unreal, imaginative, and what is actually the truth and the reality, this distinction becomes blurred. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. You know, here is a simile, a comparison. The brain of a child becomes like cheese, meaning the brain of the child becomes pliable. He believes what he sees. I told you, he doesn't know what is real and what is real. Therefore, he believes in what he sees. That is why, as soft as cheese, meaning the brain starts believing what it sees. It does not try to distinguish between reality and imagination. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. Since he is only watching, I told you, a child doesn't think. So the sense of thinking, the power of thinking in the child remains unused. Unused iron rusts, so the brain rusts, freezes, and stops functioning and thinking. He cannot think, he only sees. A child stops thinking, a child stops imagining, a child stops being creative. The only thing he does is he sees and watches the screen of the television. Now you see, the poet has given several ill effects of watching television on children. And imagine, he is addressing the parents. So the parents seem to be a bit restless and irritated. They don't want any more ill effects of watching television on children to be reeled and given by the poet. That is why they restlessly and irritatedly say, all right, you will cry, all right, you will say. The parents will say, all right, you have given enough points of the ill effects of watching television on children. Now the poet is asked a question by the parents. What shall we do to entertain our darling children? Please explain. The parents will ask, if we do not allow our children to watch television, then what will we do for the entertainment of our beloved children? Please give us a solution. Please give us a suggestion. We will answer this by asking you, what used the darling ones to do? How used they keep themselves contented before this monster was invented? Have you forgotten? Don't you know? Instead of answering the question of the parents, the poet is asking a counter question. The poet is asking, my dear parents, when you were children, the television had not been invented. Then when you were children, how did you keep yourselves entertained? How did you keep yourselves busy? How did you keep yourselves contented and satisfied? Have you forgotten what you used to do? He is asking a counter question to the parents. And again you will notice, instead of the word television, the poet is using the word monster. The television is like a monster. It is wicked. It is destructive. It doesn't do anything good for the children. We will say it very loud and slow. They used to read, they would read and read and read and read and then proceed to read some more. When the parents were children with no television, the only form of entertainment they had was to read. And you will notice, again, the word read is not only in capital letters, it has been repeated again and again and again and again. Again, the poet is highlighting the importance and the significance of reading books. Great Scott, Gadzooks. Oh my God. The poet is exclaiming with surprise, oh my God, oh by the hooks of the cross of Jesus Christ, what beautiful books we used to read. The point is, the poet here has become a bit nostalgic. He is going down the memory lane to the past, to his childhood, when he and children like him used to read books to spend their time. One half their lives was reading books. According to the poet, half of the life of the children was spent in reading books. The nursery shelves held books galore. Nursery is the room for the children. The shelves in that room were filled with plenty of books which the children used to read. Books cluttered up the nursery floor. Books lay scattered on the floor of the room of the child. And in the bedroom by the bed, more books were waiting to be read. By the side of the bed of the child, more books were kept for the child to read. That means wherever the child would go, he will have no other option but to pick up a book and start reading. Such wondrous, fine, fantastic tales. I told you, the poet has become nostalgic. He is imagining, oh, what beautiful, wonderful, attractive, charming, interesting books and stories we used to read. And then he is giving a list of the kinds of books he used to read. Children like him used to read when the television had not been invented. They used to read books of dragons, gypsies, queens and whales, and treasure isles. They used to read about islands where treasures, looted, plundered, and stolen were hidden, and distant shores where smugglers rode with muffled roars. They used to read stories about faraway countries where smugglers used to row their boats quietly and silently at night to store their hidden treasure. And pirates wearing purple pants. They used to read stories about pirates wearing purple colored pants. You know, pirates are sea robbers. Again, see, pirates wearing purple pants. Repetition of the consonant P, and therefore you have an alliteration. And sailing ships. They used to read about ships sailing. Again, alliteration. Sailing ships, SS. And elephants. They used to read stories about elephants. And cannibals crouching round the pot. You know cannibals. Human beings who eat human flesh. So, they used to read stories about cannibals, human flesh eaters, seated around a pot. And in the pot, something was being cooked. Again, cannibals crouching. Repetition of the C sound, therefore alliteration. Stirring away at something hot. You know, they used to read about cannibals seated around a pot where something was boiling or cooking, and the cannibals stirring at the mixture inside the pot, cooking something tasteful and delicious. Good gracious, it is Penelope. Sorry, it smells so good. What can it be? Good gracious, it is Penelope. Imagine, the child would use his imagination. Look at the word Penelope. Actually, Penelope was the wife of the Greek hero Ulysses. In some workbook, the word Ulysses will be referred to as Odysseus. Please note, Ulysses or Odysseus, they are the same person, the Greek hero. But here in this poem, Penelope is the name of a very delicious dish. So, the child while reading this would imagine that the cannibals were preparing a delicious, tasteful dish called Penelope. They would imagine. The younger ones at Beatrix Potter, very young children, used to read the stories written by Beatrix Potter. Beatrix Potter was a British writer of animal stories primarily meant for children. So they used to read stories written by Beatrix Potter. With Mr. Todd the Dirty Rotter. In these stories there were characters. One was Mr. Todd, who was a rotter, a very wicked, cruel person. And Squirrel Nutkin, Pigling Bland. They used to read stories about a squirrel. They used to read stories about pigs and piglets. And Mrs. Tiggy Winkle. All these are characters from the stories written by Beatrix Potter. You will have to memorize and remember them. Just how the camel got its hump and how the monkey lost his rump. They used to read stories about how the camel got the hump at the back and how the monkey lost the rear portion of his body. And Mr. Toad and bless my soul, there is Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole. All these, Mr. Toad, Mr. Rat, Mr. Mole, all are characters from the stories written by Beatrix Potter, and you will have to remember them by heart. These stories, the poet and children like him used to read when they were in the times when the television had not been invented. So please, oh books, what books they used to know, those children living long ago. Who are these children living long ago? The children in the times when the television had not been invented. They used to spend the time reading books. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go throw your TV set away, and in its place you can install a lovely bookshelf on the wall, and then fill the shelves with lots of books. The poet is again saying in a persuasive, pleading, appealing tone, my dear parents, please, I'm begging you, I'm requesting you, I'm praying to you, throw away your TV set, and in place of the TV set, install a bookshelf and stuff and fill the bookshelf with books. ignoring all the dirty looks. Now we come to a bit of humor. When the TV set will be taken away, children will obviously be angry. They will give angry looks to their parents. But the poet is telling the parents to ignore those angry looks. The screams and yells. Children will scream and shout in protest. Parents should ignore those screams and shouts of protest. The bites and kicks. Some of the children will bite and kick their parents for removing the television. Parents should ignore them. And children hitting you with sticks. Even if the parents are hit with sticks by the children, parents should ignore it, because parents should remain firm in their decision of removing the television set. Fear not, because we promise you that in about a week or two of having nothing else to do, they will now begin to feel the need of having something to read. The poet is saying, my dear parents, don't be concerned, don't feel nervous about the reactions of the children, because within a week or two, you will see the change. Once the TV set is removed, the children will have nothing else to do, and therefore they will reluctantly, unwillingly pick up a book and start reading, because they have nothing else to do. And once they start, oh boy, you watch the slowly growing joy that fills their hearts. Remember, interest in reading books will not come in a day. The interest will grow slowly. But as time will pass, the children will become more and more interested in reading the books. And obviously, with growing interest, they will start reading more and more books. They will find joy and happiness in reading books. They will grow so keen, they will wonder what they had ever seen in that ridiculous machine. They will become so keen and interested in reading books that they will now start thinking, why did we watch television? What did we find so interesting in watching television? Reading books is much better, more interesting, more enjoyable, more entertaining than watching television. Again, you will notice the poet doesn't use the word television here. He calls it a ridiculous machine, a metaphor. The TV here is a stupid, ridiculous, foolish machine and nothing else. That nauseating, foul, unclean, repulsive television screen. Now see, here the poet is describing the television, but the television here has been personified. It is given human qualities. What is the television like? It is nauseating. It is disgusting. It's foul. It's wicked. It's unclean. It's dirty. It's useless. Repulsive. It's hateful. All these words, the TV is wicked, hateful, useless, meaningless, worthless. All these indicate as if the television is a human being. So here the television has been personified. And later, each and every kid will love you more for what you did. As the children grow up, they will thank the parents for removing the television set and forcing them to read books. Obviously, that will be the greatest contribution of the parents to the lives of these children. The last thing before I conclude is obviously the theme of the poem. I told you the theme of the poem is simple. The ill effects of watching television, its bad effects on children. Now, I told you the poem was written in 1964, when television was the only gadget to which the children were hooked to. But the poem also has a contemporary theme or relevance. The point is, today we have so many gadgets. For example, the mobile. Children are hooked, addicted to the mobile. So if you replace the word television and write mobile, whatever is being said in the poem, it doesn't change. Just as television took away the thinking power, the imaginative power, and the creativity of children, made them dull and stupid and boring. Similarly, any contemporary or modern gadget would do the same and have the same effect on the children. That is the modern or the contemporary relevance, and obviously the theme is the ill effects of watching television on the children. That is the poem Television, very important for your ICSE 2021. Thank you, stay home, stay safe, and in the next class, we will pick up one by one the poems that had come in 2019, and we will start with the poem, The Patriot. Thank you once again.
Welcome back. Today I'm going to start another important chapter under trigonometry. It's called Heights and Distances. Here we learn the practical application of trigonometry in our day-to-day life. But before going to start the chapter, first you need to understand certain terms related in height and distances like line of sight, angle of elevation, and angle of depression. So let us try to understand first line of sight. Suppose you are standing over here and the object is placed over here. So how will you look? You look straight. So this is your normal line of sight. Now line of sight means the way you look at any object is called line of sight. Suppose the same object is placed above the normal line of sight. Again, how will you look? You have to look up to see the object. And same object is placed below the normal line of sight. Again, you have to look down to see the line of sight. It means, line of sight means the way you look any object. Without knowing line of sight, you are not able to solve height and distances, because in this chapter, angle of elevation and angle of depression is very important. Now let us take another example. Suppose this is ground. Suppose this is ground. You are standing over here. You are standing over here, and this is your friend's house who is on the terrace. Okay. Now this is your normal line of sight, which is parallel to the ground. So we can say this is horizontal. Now your friend calls you from here. How do you look? You look up. You look up. Okay. So this angle is called angle of elevation. Angle of elevation means the angle formed by in between line of sight and horizontal line. This is called angle of elevation. Now in next diagram we'll see angle of depression. Angle of depression. Again, this is ground. This is ground. This time, this is your friend's house. This time you are standing on the terrace. Your friend is here on the ground. Now this is your normal line of sight. Now he calls you from the ground. How will you look? You have to look down to see him. So this angle is called angle of depression. So with this, I think you are able to understand the meaning of line of sight, angle of elevation, and angle of depression. Now, since it is a trigonometric based chapter, you have to go back to class 9 also, where you studied trigonometric ratio of table, that trigonometric table, etc., etc. So quickly we'll revise that also. In class 9, you have learned. Some people have curly brown hair turns permanently black. What do you mean by this? Suppose this is ground, this is your friend's house. Remember this? Okay. Now, this is called perpendicular, this is called base, and this is called hypotenuse. Now, some people have, means what? If the perpendicular and hypotenuse is given, you have to use sine theta. If base and hypotenuse is given, you have to use cos theta. If perpendicular and base is given, you have to use tan theta. Now, in this chapter, in height and distance, mostly you have to use tan theta. Only in ICSE 99, if you look at the past paper, where you have to apply sine theta. Now, that question we are going to do afterwards. Now, after this, you have to know certain values. That remember that 60 degree, 30 degree. You have done this in class 9. You have learned that how to make table. Okay. Now, that table I am going to start. First one is 0 degree. After that, 30 degree. After that, 45 degree. 60 degree and 90 degree. You have learned this. This is called standard angle. Okay. Now 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. What is the last number? Last number is 4. So you have to divide all the number by 4. You have to divide all the number by 4. Then put square root. Put this sign. Now, the first identity in trigonometry is sine theta. 0 divided by 4 is obviously 0. That means the value of sine 0 degree is 0. Similarly, square root of 1 is 1 only. Square root of 4 is 2. And the important one is take out in lowest term. So under root 1 is 1 only, root 2. After that, root 3 is root 3 only. But root 4 means 2. Now, these 2 will get cancelled. This is 1. It means sine 0, I have told you, sine 0 means 0 only. Sine 30 degree means half. Sine 45 degree means 1 by root 2. Sine 60 degree means root 3 by 2. Sine 90 degree is 1. After that, cos theta. Now, cos theta, you have to start from here. It means cos 0 degree is 1. Cos 30 degree is root 3 by 2. Cos 45 degree is 1 by root 2. After that, 1 by 2. And last one is 0. Now, tan theta. In last class, while doing trigonometric identities, I have given the formula tan theta equals to sine theta divided by cos theta. So 0 divided by 1 is 0 only. Now, if you divide these two, divide means you have done in junior classes 1 by 2 divided by root 3 by 2. Now, how are you going to solve? 1 by 2 into 2 divided by root 3. These 2 will get cancelled. So, what is left? 1 by root 3. That means tan 30 degree is 1 by root 3. After that, again, these 2 will get cancelled. That means denominator. If you cancel this, you will get 1. After that, 2 will get cancelled. This is root 3. And last one is undefined. It means tan 0 degree is 0 only. Tan 30 degree means 1 by root 3. Tan 45 degree means 1. Tan 60 degree is root 3. Now, in ICSE syllabus, only you need to know tan theta that I have told you before. Only in ICSE 1991, you have to use sine theta. That question we are going to do afterwards. Now, remaining, there are still 3 more identities are there. Cosec theta, sec theta, and cot theta. For that, we have done in last class, cosec theta means opposite of sine theta. Sec theta means opposite of cos theta, and cot theta means opposite of tan theta. That identity is not required in height and distances. Only you have to know sine theta, cos theta, and tan theta. So with this basic, I hope you understand about height and distances. Now quickly, we'll do few questions. First question from this height and distances is, an electric pole is 10 meter high. If its shadow is 10 root 3 meters in length, find the elevation of the sun. Number one, you have to understand the question, because height and distances diagram is very important. If you understand the question, then you are able to make diagram. If you make the diagram, then you will get the answer. Otherwise, you will not get the answer. Okay. Now, read the first question. An electric pole is 10 meter high. Suppose this is ground. An electric pole is 10 meter high. So this is electric pole. This is B. This is C. If you join it, This angle you have to find out, which is angle of elevation. Now an electric pole is 10 meter high. This is 10 meter and length of its shadow is 10 root 3. 10 root 3. Now just see the information given in the question. Perpendicular is given, base is given. That means which identity you are going to use? Obviously tan theta, because turns permanently black. P means perpendicular, black means base. In triangle ABC, tan theta equals to perpendicular by base. So perpendicular is AC and base is BC, and the value is 10 divided by 10 root 3. Cancel these two, you will get 1 by root 3. Now 1 by root 3 means from that table it is 30 degree. That means angle of elevation in this question is 30 degree. Similarly, question number 2. The angle of elevation of the top of the tower from a point on the level ground and at a distance of 150 meter. So distance is given, which is 150 meter. From its foot is 30 degree. That means angle is given. Find the height of the tower correct to one place of decimal. Again, this is tower, this is base. If you join it, you will get 90 degree. This is A, this is B, this is C. This is 150 meter. Here, angle of elevation is 30 degree. You have to find out height. Right? P, H, it's up to you. Again, you have to use tan theta because turns permanently black. In triangle ABC, tan 30 degree equals to P by B. Now tan 30 degree means 1 by root 3 equals to perpendicular. You can write AB also, no problem. Base is, you can write BC. Now value is given. 1 by root 3 is equal to P or H. Write any alphabet divided by 150. Now cross multiply it. Root 3H equals to 150. Root 3H equals to 150. Now H equals to 150 divided by root 3. Now here you have to rationalize because question is correct to one place of decimal. Rationalize means you have to multiply by the denominator. Root 3 divided by root 3 means 150 root 3 divided by 3. If you cancel this, you will get 50 root 3. So 50 into root 3. The value of root 3 is 50 into 1.732. If you multiply it, you will get 86.6 meter. Okay. Now question number 3. Now question number 3. From a point P on the level ground. From a point P on the level ground. This is P. This is B. The angle of elevation of the top of the tower is 30 degree. Again, this angle is 30 degree. If the tower is 100 meter high, this is tower which is 100 meter high. You have to find out how far is P from the foot of the tower. That means you have to find out base, which is X. Now, in triangle ABC, tan 30 degree equals to P by B. Tan 30 degree means 1 by root 3 equals to 100 by X. So X equals to 100 root 3 or 100 into the value of root 3 is 1.732. Now always remember, while multiplying, the decimal will move right hand side. So answer is 173.2 meter. Okay. Now this question number 4. Number 4, this is ICSE 1991. I have told you this is the only question where you have to use sin theta. And why to use sin theta, that is important. This is the only question in the history of ICSE where sin theta will be used to find the answer. But why you have to use sin theta, that is important. Okay. A kite is flying at a height of 60 meter. A kite is flying. Suppose this is ground, this is height, this is A, this is B, this is C. Okay. A kite is flying at a height of 60 meter. So this is 60 meter. Incline at 60 degree. This is 60 degree. Now the question is find the length of the string. Find the length of the string means from here is flying the kite. That means it will move upwards or going straight. Obviously x. So it means tan theta turns permanently black. There is nothing to do with base. Okay, that means you have to use sin theta. Some people have. That means have is unknown. That is hypotenuse is unknown. So in triangle ABC, sin 60 degree equals to some people have. Sin 60 means root 3 by 2. I have taught that table. Equals to perpendicular is 60 divided by x. Now root 3x equals to 120, x equals to 120 divided by root 3. So 120 divided by root 3, again you have to rationalize. Rationalize means multiply with the denominator. It means 120 root 3 divided by 3. Cancel this, you will get 40 root 3 means 40 into 1.732. If you multiply, you will get 69.28 meter. Here in this particular question, answer is not important. Why you are using sin theta? That is important because in this question hypotenuse is asked to find out. That's why you are using sin 60 degree. Okay. Now question number 5. Again number 5 you have to understand. In number 5, if you look at the question properly, two things you have to keep in mind. Number 1 is angle of depression and number 2 is angle is not standard, which is 20 degree. In case of not standard angle or in case of non-standard angle, you have to use log table to get the answer. From the top of the cliff, 92 meter high. Suppose this is 92, this is B, this is C, this is 90 degree, this is A. The angle of depression means you have to draw this line, okay, which is 20 degree. Actually angle of depression and angle of elevation is same. This is also 20 degree. You have to find out the distance, that means x. Now here there are two methods. In this case, if you apply, obviously you have to apply tan theta. The calculation part will be difficult. I am doing by both the method. Please watch it or look at properly. In triangle ABC, tan 20 degree equals to P by B. Now tan 20 degree is not standard angle. 60 degree, 30 degree, 45 degree, 90 degree, 0 degree is called standard angle that I have shown you. Now this 20 degree you have to refer log table. In exam you will get it. Okay. Now tan 20 degree means find out the value from here. 0 degree, 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, all degrees are given here and the values are here. Now tan 20 degree means 0.3640. It means tan 20 degree means 0.3640 equals to 92 by x, or x equals to 92 divided by 0.3640. If you remove the decimal 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. Now 92, 1, 2, 3 divided by 364. Now just look at the calculation portion. It is difficult. If you divide it, you will get the answer, but it is difficult. The answer is 252.77 or approximately 253 meter. Now always remember, if standard angle is not given, then use cot theta. That will be more easier than this tan theta. So again I am doing same question by using cot theta. Why cot theta? Just look at this portion. Now here you have to divide. So cot theta means this will go up and this will come down. That means you have to multiply. Now always multiplication will be easier. Here, second method, in triangle ABC, cot 20 degree is equal to, cot means opposite of tan, that means B by P. Now you will not get the value of cot 20 degree in that log table. Now just go to class 9 where you have done trigonometric ratio of complementary angle, where you have learned sin 90 minus theta equals to cos theta, cos 90 minus theta is equal to sin theta, tan 90 minus theta is equal to cot theta, cot 90 minus theta is equal to tan theta, etc., etc. Now here you have to convert this cot into tan. Now how we are going to convert is cot 90 degree minus. Now which number, if you write here, you will get 20 degree because total is 90 degree. So out of 90, 20 is already here. So you have to write 70 equals to B by P. Sorry, B is X and P is 92. After converting cot 90 minus theta, you will get tan theta equals to X by 92. Now tan 70 degree from here, tan 70 degree. Tan 70 degree means 2.2475. Tan 70 is here and answer is here. 2.7425. 2.7425 into 92 equals to X. If you multiply, again you will get 252.77, 252.77, which comes approximately 253 meter. Now the next question. Question number 6. Question number 6. Two men are on the opposite sides of the tower. Two men are on the opposite sides of the tower. They measure the angle of elevation of the top of the tower is 30 degree and 60 degree respectively. If the height of the tower is 50 root 3 meter, find the distance between them. Here in this question, the word opposite is very important because you have to draw the figure. Diagrams are not given. Now, just imagine this is ground, okay, this is pole. Now two men are opposite sides of the tower means here and here. A, B, C, suppose this is A and this is D. What is the first angle? First angle is 30 degree. So this is 30 degree and this is 60 degree. If the height of the tower is 50 root 3, means this is 50 root 3, you have to find out distance which is BC. Consider the value of BD is X and the value of DC is Y. Then you first find out the value of X by using 30 degree. After that you find out the value of Y by using 60 degree. Then add it, you will get the answer. So here there are two right angle triangle. First one is ADB and second one is ADC. So first we will take triangle ABD. In triangle ABD, tan 30 degree equals to P by P. Tan 30 degree means 1 by root 3. Perpendicular is AD and base is BD. Now just put the value. 1 by root 3 equals to 50 root 3 divided by X. Cross multiply it. X equals to 50 root 3 into 3. X equals to 50 into 3, which is 150 meter. That means the value of X is 150 meter. Now second triangle. In triangle ADC, tan 60 degree equals to P by B. Root 3 equals to AD divided by DC. root 3 equals to 50 root 3 divided by y. This and this cancel, y is equal to 50. Therefore, total distance equals to x plus y, which is 150 plus 50 equals to 200 meter. So with the help of this question, you try ICSE 2017 and 2014. Now, next question. Again, question number 7, where angles are not standard, use cot theta. That will be easy for you. In question number 7, diagram is given. This is ICSE 2010 question. Angle of depression is given. Okay, this is A, this is B, this is D, this is C, and the height is 100 meter. First angle is 40 degree, and the second angle is 36 degree. 36 degree means angle of elevation is also 40 degree, angle of elevation is also 36 degree. This part is x and this part is y. Everything is same. The only difference is it is not standard angle. So please use cot theta. That is easy for you. In triangle, again process is same. In triangle ABD, cot 48 equals to B by P. Now you have to convert this cot into tan. Cot 90 degree minus 42 degree equals to x divided by 100. Now if you convert cot, you will get tan. Tan 42 equals to x by 100. Now you have to know the value of tan 42 from that log table. The value of tan 42, you please refer log table, which comes 0.9004 equals to x by 100. So x equals to, if you multiply these two, 0.9004 into 100. Now always remember, I have told you before also, while multiplying the decimal will move right hand side. So the answer will be 90.04 meter. So this is the value of x. Now similarly you have to find out the value of y. So to find y, take another triangle, which is triangle A. In triangle ADC, now cot 36 degree. Cot 36 degree equals to B by P. Again you convert this cot into tan by using formula. Cot 90 degree minus 54 equals to y by 100. So after converting cot, you will get tan. So tan 54 equals to y by 100. Similarly, use log table, you will get 1.3764. If you multiply into 100 equals to y, and while multiplying, decimal will move right hand side. 137.64 equals to y. Now the value of x is 90.04 and the value of y is 137.64. Now the total distance, therefore total distance equals to x plus y. 90.04 plus 137.64. If you add it, 90.04, 137.64, 8, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 227.68, 227.68 meter. 4 plus 4, 8, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 227.68 meter, which is the total distance from B to C. Okay, today's last question is question number 8. This is not ICC question, but this is also equally important. Now, two boats approach a lighthouse in the mid-sea from opposite direction. Whenever there is opposite direction, the figure is important. You have to draw this type of figure. Okay, After that, make sure whether angle of elevation or angle of depressions are given. The angle of elevation of the top of the lighthouse from the boat is 30 degree and 45 degree. This is 30 degree and this is 45 degree. You can name it ABCD. Now here, if the distance between the two boats is 100 meter, this is 100 meter. That means total distance is 100 meter. You have to find out height. Now here, this 100 is not equally divided. It is not 50-50. Do simple way. This is x and this is y. Therefore, x plus y equals to 100. Again, in this case, there are two right angle triangle. First is in triangle ABC. Tan 30 degree is equal to P by B. 1 by root 3 is equal to AB divided by BC. 1 by root 3 is equal to H divided by X. Cross multiplied, X equals to root 3H, which is equation 1. After that, go to next triangle. In triangle ABD. In triangle ABD, tan 45 degree is equal to P by B. 1 equals to H divided by Y. Y is equal to H, which is equation 2. Now X plus Y equals to 100. X plus Y equals to 100. Now just put the value of X. The value of X is root 3H plus the value of Y is H equals to 100. If you take H common, this is root 3 plus 1 equals to 100. Therefore, H equals to 100 divided by root 3 plus 1. Now you have to rationalize. 100 divided by root 3 plus 1 into root 3 minus 1 divided by root 3 minus 1 equals to 100 root 3 minus 100. You just multiply these two value by 100. Now here root 3 plus 1, root 3 minus 1 is again a square minus b square. Now put the value of root 3, which is 1.732 minus 100 divided by 3 minus 1 equals to, now if you multiply 1.732 by 100, you will get 173.2 minus 100 divided by 2, which comes 73.2 divided by 2, and the answer is 2 3s are 6, 2 6s are 12, 2 6s are 12. Therefore, height equals to 36.6 meter. This much for today. We'll continue tomorrow, height and distance. Stay safe, stay home. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon students. In my last class I taught you about periodic table and tried to give you some concept about it. In today's class, okay, we're going to do the second chapter in your syllabus, that is chemical bonding. So, before I start this chapter, we need to understand what does a bond stands for. The chapter name is chemical bonding, but what does bond mean? Many, they say it's a relationship. Okay, it's a bond. It's a relationship. It's true, it's a relationship. But we cannot write like that in board exam. You know that there is different kind of bond we see. Okay, a bond can be formed between two persons of same kind or different kind. Means a bond can be made between two boys or between two girls or between boy and a girl. For example, there is a husband-wife bond. There is a brother-sister bond. There is your teacher-student bond. There is friendship bond. There are different kinds of bond. But why we are forming that bond? To become happy in life. And what happens if we become happy in life? We become stable. Okay, and once we become stable, our energy will be minimum. So we all wants to become stable, means energy will be minimum. When you are unstable, when you are angry, you are unstable, your energy will be high. That time, okay, your energy will be maximum. So similarly, our chemical bond is nothing but it is a force of attraction, we say, between the two elements of same kind or different kind. So if you see out here, students, in the chapter called chemical bonding, we are going to learn about chemical bond. And we say that it is a force of attraction between two elements of same kind or different kinds. Same kind means it may be between two hydrogen, it may be between two chlorine, same kind. Different kind means it may be between H and Cl. So bond is nothing, students, do remember from now on, it is a force of attraction between two elements of same kind or two elements of different kind. And now the question arises, why these elements are forming bond? Okay, number one reason for formation of bond is to attain stable electronic configuration, and that means duplet or octet. Once they lose, they gain, they share electron. Element, they lose, gain or share electrons to become stable. And stable means either duplet or octet. And once the element becomes stable, their energy will be minimum. So do remember there are two reasons for formation of bond. Number one, to attain stable electronic configuration, that is duplet octet, and they do so by losing, gaining or sharing electrons. Number two, to attain minimum energy. So from today you remember, chemical bond is a force of attraction between two elements of same kind or different kind, and that may be between two hydrogen, two chlorine, or between hydrogen and chlorine. And the cause for formation of bond, number one reason is to attain stable electronic configuration, that is duplet octet, and number two, to attain minimum energy. Now we will see the type of chemical bond. There are usually three types of chemical bond which is in your syllabus, and those are electrovalent bond, also known by the name ionic bond, covalent bond, also known by the name molecular bond. Number three is coordinate bond, also known by dative bond. So these are the three chemical bonds which is in your syllabus. But in higher studies, you come to know there are many other bonds. Okay, that is for higher studies, for class 11. For right now, in 10 syllabus, you need to learn only about these three types of bond, that is electrovalent, covalent, and coordinate. The other names are ionic bond, molecular bond, and dative bond. Now, we are going to learn about is electrovalent bond. Okay, electrovalent bond. So do remember, students, it is a bond which is formed by loss or gain of electrons or transfer of electrons between metal and non-metal. Usually electrovalent bond is formed between metals and non-metals. Usually metal, they lose electron, non-metal, they gain electron. As a result, they form a bond called electrovalent bond. And after losing, metal becomes octet, and after gaining, non-metal also becomes octet. So do remember, electrovalent bond is a bond which is formed by loss or gain of electrons or transfer of electrons between metals and non-metals. Reason for doing so, to become stable, to attain stable electronic configuration. It is also known by the name ionic bond. Compound formed by such bond is called electrovalent compound or ionic compound. The compound formed by electrovalent bond is called electrovalent compound or ionic compound. And do remember, such compound in solution, they produce ions. Means electrovalent compound when dissolved, okay, and kept in solution form, they produce ions. And since they produce ions, they are good conductor of electricity. Now, whenever they form electrovalent bond, one element is going to lose electron, the other is going to gain. So whatever number of electron they lose or gain, okay, indicates electrovalency. So what is electrovalency? It is the number of electron loss or gain by the elements during the formation of electrovalent bond. Okay, so do remember, whatever number of electron the metal lose, whatever the number of electron the non-metal gain, that number of electron indicates electrovalency. Now we will see some of the example of electrovalent compound which is in your syllabus. Number one is sodium chloride, formula NaCl. Number two is calcium oxide, formula CaO. Number three is magnesium chloride, formula MgCl2. So these are the three electrovalent compound which is in your syllabus. Okay, now we will see covalent compound. Covalent bond is, okay, formed by sharing of electrons, and that occurs between two non-metals, and by sharing both the non-metal become stable. That means duplet or octet. Clear? So covalent bond is a bond formed by sharing of electrons between two non-metals or more than that to attain stable electronic configuration. It is also known by the name molecular bond, and the compound formed by covalent bond is called covalent compound or molecular compound, you can say. And such compound in solution, they produce molecule, therefore they don't conduct electricity. Now we go to the covalency. During the formation of covalent bond, okay, they share electrons, and whatever is the number of electrons they share during the formation of covalent bond is called covalency. So do remember, covalency means the number of electrons shared between the elements during the formation of covalent bond. Now we will see the example of covalent compound. There are many, but I have given you some out here, which is in our syllabus. So the example of covalent compound is hydrogen, whose formula is H2, chlorine Cl2, oxygen O2, nitrogen N2, water H2O, ammonia NH3, methane CH4, and carbon tetrachloride CCl4, and finally the last one is hydrogen chloride, symbol HCl, formula HCl. Okay, so do remember, electrovalent compound is formed by loss or gain, which occurs between metal and non-metal to attain stable electronic configuration, whereas covalent bond is formed by sharing of electrons between the non-metal to become stable. And do remember, electrovalent compound in solution, they produce ions, therefore they conduct electricity, whereas covalent compound, they produce molecule and they do not conduct electricity. So this is all about electrovalent definition and covalent bond definition. Now third, that is coordinate bond, that we will see in some other classes. Now for both these two compound, that is electrovalent compound formed by electrovalent bond, covalent compound formed by covalent bond, we are going to see the property of both. We are going to see the property of electrovalent compound as well as the property of covalent compound one by one. Now here we are going to see the property of electrovalent compound first. Number one, they are mostly solid. Do remember, electrovalent compounds are mostly solid. Reason, in electrovalent bond between the ion there exists a strong electrostatic force of attraction between the ions, and they are closely packed. Therefore, they exist in solid state. Number two, in pure state, they are bad conductor of electricity. Electrovalent compound are bad conductor of electricity in pure state. But in aqueous state, molten state, or in fused state, they are good conductor of electricity. Why? In pure state, the electrostatic force of attraction will be very high. Therefore, they will not break down to produce ions, and hence they don't conduct electricity. But in molten state, fused state, or in aqueous state, this electrostatic force of attraction decreases, whereby they dissociate to produce ions, and hence they conduct electricity. So do remember, electrovalent compound in pure state are bad conductor, but in aqueous state, molten state, or fused state, they are good conductor of electricity. Number three, they are non-volatile, means they will not vaporize. Number four, electrovalent compound, they have high melting point and boiling point. Number five, in solution, they remain in the form of ions. As a result, they conduct electricity. Number six, usually electrovalent compound are mostly inorganic compound. Therefore, they are soluble in inorganic solvent like water. Okay. Do remember, there are two kinds of compound in chemistry. One is called organic, one is called inorganic. Carbon containing compound mostly are organic, but not always. So the compound which does not contain carbon are mostly inorganic compounds. So inorganic means the one who does not contain carbon. Organic means what? The one who contains carbon in them. But in some cases it may be not so. There are some compound like sodium carbonate, there is carbon in it, but yet it is inorganic compound. Okay, so there is some exceptional cases, but mostly carbon containing compounds are organic and carbon does not containing compound are inorganic. So usually electrovalent compound does not contain carbon, therefore they are inorganic compound, and they are soluble in inorganic solvent like water, because in water also there is no carbon because the formula is H2O. So do remember, electrovalent compound are mostly inorganic due to absence of carbon in them. As a result, they are soluble in inorganic solvent like water. So these are the 6 properties of electrovalent compound. Do remember it. Now, how to remember the property of covalent compound? You can just simply make it opposite. Covalent compound property, they are mostly liquid or gas. Covalent compound, they are good conductor of electricity. Covalent compound, they are volatile, means they will vaporize. Covalent compound, they have low melting point and boiling point. Covalent compound, in solution, they remain in the form of molecules, due to which they do not conduct electricity. Covalent compound are mostly organic compounds and are soluble in organic solvent like alcohol, benzene. These are the examples of organic solvent: alcohol, benzene. So if you know the property of electrovalent compound, that is 6 given out here, make it opposite. That becomes the property of covalent compound. And if you keep this property, 6 property, in a column form, that becomes the difference between. So students, if you know the property of both, you can make the difference between them, and there will be 6 difference between them. So I like to request you to remember the property of electrovalent compound only. Make it opposite, you get for the covalent compound, and that will give you the difference between them. So you can see again one more time. I like to show you the property of covalent compound. They are liquid or gas, they are bad conductor, they are volatile. Electrovalent has high melting point, boiling point. Covalent has low. Electrovalent compound, they produce ions and conducts electricity, whereas covalent compound in solution produce molecules and they do not conduct electricity. Electrovalent compound are mostly inorganic compound, whereas covalent compound are mostly organic compound. Inorganic electrovalent compound, being inorganic compound, is soluble in inorganic solvent like water, whereas covalent compound are mostly organic compound, therefore they are soluble in organic solvent like benzene and alcohol. And both benzene and alcohol contains carbon in them. So this is what all about difference between electrovalent compound and covalent compound. Now we will see some question answers of the portions whatever I have taught you so far. Let us see first reasoning question. Electrovalent compounds are bad conductor of electricity in pure state, but in molten state, fused state, or in aqueous state, they are good conductor of electricity. Explain. I am talking about number 1 question. Answer I have given you, you can go through it, okay. Answer should be given this way. In pure state, electrovalent compound, the electrostatic force of attraction will be very high. As a result, they will not dissociate to produce ions and they will not conduct electricity. Whereas in aqueous state, fused state, or molten state, the electrostatic force of attraction decreases, whereby they produce ions easily and they conduct electricity. Now number 2, pure NaCl is bad conductor of electricity, but aqueous NaCl, fused NaCl, or molten NaCl is good conductor of electricity. Explain. Now in this question, answer can be given the same one, you just have to replace electrovalent compound with NaCl. Reason? Because Na is metal and Cl is non-metal, and the bond formed between metal and non-metal is electrovalent, therefore this is an electrovalent compound. So you just have to replace the word electrovalent compound with NaCl, then you get the answer. Therefore I have written here answer same as above, just replace electrovalent compound with NaCl. This is general question, the first one. The second one is particular question. Answer will be same, just replace electrovalent compound with NaCl. Now number 3 question, okay. NaCl is soluble in water. Explain. Okay, NaCl is soluble in water. Explain. First tell me, Na is metal, Cl is non-metal, therefore they form electrovalent bond, so therefore NaCl is electrovalent compound. And they are soluble in water. Water formula is H2O, no carbon in it, therefore it is an inorganic solvent. So electrovalent compound are soluble in inorganic solvent like water. So the answer will be NaCl is an electrovalent compound due to which it is soluble in inorganic solvent like water. Now we go to the number 4 question here. Carbon tetrachloride, formula of carbon tetrachloride is CCl4, is insoluble in water. Explain. Now since here is carbon, therefore it is organic compound, and organic compounds are mostly covalent, and covalent compounds are soluble in organic solvent like alcohol, benzene, but water is inorganic, therefore it is insoluble. So what will be the answer then? CCl4 is a covalent compound due to which it is soluble in organic solvent like alcohol, benzene, but not in inorganic solvent like water. Now next number 5 question is CCl4 is bad conductor of electricity. Explain. Carbon tetrachloride, inside that carbon is non-metal, chlorine is non-metal, therefore it contains covalent bond, therefore it is a covalent compound. And covalent compound, they produce molecule, as a result they are bad conductor of electricity. Now we go to the last question, number 6, and that is NaCl is solid. Explain. Do remember, NaCl is an electrovalent compound because Na is metal, Cl is non-metal, so the bond between them is electrovalent. Therefore, NaCl is an electrovalent compound, and in electrovalent compound there exists a strong electrostatic force of attraction between Na plus and Cl minus ion. As a result, okay, they are compactly packed and they exist in solid state. So these are the most popular 6 questions which has come from this chapter in chemical bonding. So far I have explained you about the definition of electrovalent bond and covalent bond, property of both, and what does electrovalency and covalency means. Now I would like to show you the Lewis structure of electrovalent compound first, then the Lewis structure of covalent compound. Okay, the heading says Lewis structure of electrovalent compound. Number 1 I have given you here is NaCl. So NaCl means sodium chloride. NaCl means sodium chloride. So to make the Lewis structure of sodium chloride, first you need to remember the atomic number of individual elements. So do remember sodium atomic number is 11, so the configuration will be 281, and chlorine atomic number is 17, so the configuration will be 287. Electronic configuration of sodium is what? Atomic number is 11, so configuration will be 281, and chlorine will be 17, so the configuration will be 287. After that, you need to understand that 1 in the outermost shell is what? Metal. Because I have said in my earlier class, those who have 1, 2, 3 electron in the outermost shell is metal. And those who have 4, 5, 6, 7 electron in the outermost shell, they are non-metal. So do remember, sodium is metal and chlorine is non-metal. And the bond formed between metal and non-metal is electrovalent. That is how we are going to recognize it. Now I came to know sodium is metal and chlorine is non-metal. Now look out here. Sodium has how many electron in the outermost shell? 1, which I am representing by a dot sign. And chlorine has how many electron in the outermost shell? 7, which again I am representing by dot sign. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now this being metal, it loses electron. This being non-metal, it gains electron. So whoever gains, you have to make the arrow towards it. And I am not making a straight arrow here, I am making a bent arrow. So this is how we are going to show electrovalent bond. Okay. Why I am showing arrow towards chlorine? Because it is gaining, and why tail towards sodium? Because it is losing. And do remember, electrovalent bond should be shown by the arrow sign. Now since sodium is losing 1 to become octet, after losing 1 it becomes octet, so therefore it will develop 1 positive charge. Since chlorine is gaining 1 electron to become octet, so it will develop 1 negative charge, and between plus and minus there will be attraction, whereby they form a compound called NaCl. Now in this case, if you see, sodium is losing 1 electron and chlorine is gaining 1 electron. So how many electron is being lost gain? 1. Sodium is losing 1, chlorine is gaining 1. So since the loss or gain of electron is 1, therefore the electrovalency for this compound will be 1, because sodium is losing 1 and chlorine is gaining 1. And this structure, okay, is also known by the name Lewis electron dot structure of NaCl. Why dot structure? Because I am representing electron with dot. Now again, this is your sodium. Okay, sodium has 1 electron in the outermost shell. This time I am representing it with the cross sign. And chlorine has 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again here sodium will lose and chlorine will gain, because being a non-metal it will gain. And electrovalent bond should be shown by the bent arrow sign. Okay. Now again sodium is losing 1 electron, it will develop 1 positive charge. Chlorine is gaining 1 electron, it will develop 1 negative charge, and due to attraction they form NaCl. Again if you see here also, the loss or gain of electron which is taking place during the formation of this bond is 1. Therefore electrovalency is 1. But this structure is known by the name Lewis electron cross structure. Why cross structure? Because I am representing electron with cross. So when you represent electron with dot, that is called dot structure. When you represent electron with cross, that is called cross structure. Now the last one. If you see again, sodium has 1 electron in the outermost shell, whereas chlorine has 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But this time, earlier I represent both with the dot sign, that became dot structure. Now here I am representing both with the cross sign, so it became cross structure made by Lewis. But here I am representing one element with dot, the other with the cross. So this structure is known as Lewis electron dot cross structure. Again, chlorine being non-metal gains 1 electron and sodium will lose 1 electron. So as a result, sodium will develop 1 positive charge by the loss of 1 electron. chlorine will gain one electron, so it will develop one negative charge, and due to attraction they form NaCl. Again in this case also loss or gain is 1, therefore the electrovalency will be 1, and this structure of Lewis is known as Lewis electron dot cross structure, because I am representing one element electron with dot, the other with cross. So now you have to see in ICSE whether you have to make dot structure, cross, or dot cross. If you have to make dot structure, make both with dot sign. Cross, you make with the cross sign. Dot cross, you can make one element with dot and the other with cross. So in this case, students, you can do one thing. You can make sodium with cross sign electron and chlorine with dot. Okay, both are same. It's not mandatory that you have to make sodium with dot and chlorine with cross. You can even make sodium with cross and chlorine with dot. And this is all about the Lewis structure of NaCl. So if you see out here what I have written, NaCl, atomic number will be given. So with the help of atomic number, you make the electronic configuration of both. After making the electronic configuration of both, okay, you have to see what structure you are supposed to make, dot, dot cross, or cross structure. Okay, if dot structure represent the electron of both of them with dot, cross, you make both with cross, and if it is dot cross, one element with dot, the other with cross, and whatever is the number of electron they lose gain, that indicates electrovalency. For so NaCl, electrovalency is 1. Now we will see the Lewis structure for magnesium chloride. Okay, again for magnesium chloride you need to remember is the atomic number of both, but in your board exam it will be provided to you. Okay, and atomic number of magnesium is 12, do you remember, and that of chlorine is 17. So since the magnesium atomic number is 12, so the configuration, electronic configuration, EC means electronic configuration, I have written in abbreviated form, will be 282, and that of chlorine will be 287. Again I am going to teach you how to make the dot structure, cross structure, and dot cross structure of made by Lewis for magnesium chloride. Do remember the formula of magnesium chloride is MgCl2. The formula of magnesium chloride is MgCl2. So do remember magnesium atomic number is 12, so the configuration will be 282, and chlorine is 17, so the configuration will be 287. Those who have 1, 2, 3 electron in the outermost shell is called metal. So since magnesium has 2, so it is a metal. And those who have 4, 5, 6, 7 in the outermost shell, it is non-metal. Therefore, chlorine has 7, so it is a non-metal. And now you have to isolate between metal and non-metal, which bond is formed by loss or gain. Good person they lose, bad they gain. So the compound bond formed between them is electrovalent. You came to know before in hand. Now let us make the picture. So the formula of magnesium chloride is MgCl2. If you see out here, who is single in the formula? One atom, magnesium, keep it in the center. And how many chlorines are here in the formula? 2. You keep one this side, one this side. So Mg in the middle because 1 and chlorine are 2, so I have to keep it 2 sides. Now magnesium has how many electrons in the outermost shell? 2. So make 2 electrons for the magnesium. And chlorine has how many in the outermost shell? 7. So make 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I made 2 electrons for magnesium and 7 electrons each for the 2 chlorine in the formula if you see. Now again between magnesium and chlorine, chlorine is more electronegative, so it will gain the electron of magnesium, it will gain the electron of what? Magnesium. Since magnesium is losing 2 electrons, it will develop 2 positive charge by the loss of 2 electrons. Whereas this chlorine is gaining 1 electron, it will develop 1 negative charge. Similarly, this chlorine is gaining 1 electron, it will develop 1 negative charge. And due to plus minus sign, they attract each other and form a compound called magnesium chloride. Now, if you see in this case, how many total electron is loss or gain? The number of electron loss gain is 2 here. Therefore, electrovalency will be 2 because magnesium is losing 2 electrons. Chlorine in total is gaining 2 electrons. So, therefore, the electrovalency of this compound will be 2. And this is your dot structure of magnesium chloride. Now, if you have to make cross structure, you simply replace dot sign with the cross sign. So, if you replace dot sign with the cross sign, okay, again 7 electron for the chlorine each and 2 for the magnesium, but this time I am representing with the cross sign. Therefore, it become cross structure of magnesium chloride. And similarly, if you have to make dot cross structure, represent the 2 electron of magnesium with dot and chlorine with cross, and that become dot cross structure. So you can make any three structure according to the demand of the question. Dot, make everything with dot, cross, everything with the cross. When they say dot cross, you make one element with dot, the other with cross. Here also you can represent chlorine with dot and magnesium with cross. But in all the three cases, the total loss or gain will be 2. Therefore, the electrovalency will be 2 in this case. And if you see out here, I have written in all cases electrovalency is 2 because 2 electron magnesium is losing and chlorine is gaining 1 electron each, in total 2. Therefore, the electrovalency will be 2. Now we will see the Lewis structure of calcium oxide. The formula of calcium oxide is CaO. And do remember again in board exam, atomic number will be provided to you. Calcium atomic number is 20, so the electronic configuration will be 2, 8, 8, 2, and oxygen atomic number is 8, so the configuration will be 2, 6. Now with the help of this, we are going to make dot structure, cross structure, and dot cross. Okay. Now calcium oxide, CaO is the symbol of it, formula of it. Calcium atomic number is 20, provided to you in exam. Configuration will be 2, 8, 8, 2. And oxygen is 8, so the configuration will be 2, 6. 2 in the outermost shell is metal. 1, 2, 3 in the outermost shell is metal. So 2 in the outermost shell, metal. 4, 5, 6, 7 is non-metal, so it has 6, therefore it is a non-metal. And between metal and non-metal, there exists electrovalent bond because metal is going to lose, non-metal is going to gain. Now, since there are 2 elements only out here, one is calcium, one is what? Oxygen. Calcium has how many in the outermost shell? 2. And oxygen has how many in the outermost shell? 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, oxygen being non-metal will gain the 2 electron from calcium to become octet. And do remember, electrovalent bond is always shown by bent arrow. So since calcium is losing 2 electron, it will develop 2 positive charge. Oxygen is gaining 2 electron, it will develop 2 negative charge, and this plus and minus due to attraction, they form calcium oxide. And this is your dot structure of Lewis. Lewis electron dot structure because I am representing electron with dot. Again in this case, total loss of electron by calcium is 2. And similarly, total gain of electron by oxygen is 2. So therefore the loss or gain is 2. Therefore the electrovalency will be what? 2. And this is the dot structure of calcium oxide. Now if you want to make cross structure, the same 2 electron of calcium you represent with cross, and the same 6 electron of oxygen you make it with again cross, and this become your cross structure. But if you want to make dot cross structure, represent the electron of calcium with dot and that of oxygen with cross, that become dot cross structure of calcium oxide. You can replace it also, reverse it also. Represent oxygen with dot and calcium with cross, that also become dot cross structure of calcium oxide. Now we will see is the Lewis structure of covalent compound. And the first one I have taken out here is hydrogen. Okay. Now we are going to see the Lewis structure of covalent compound, and the first one which I have taken is for hydrogen. So do remember the formula of hydrogen is H2 because it is a diatomic gas. And the atomic number of hydrogen is given 1, so electronic configuration will be 1. Now inside H2 there are 2 hydrogen, make it 2 sides. So hydrogen has 1 electron in the outermost shell. The other hydrogen also has 1 electron in the outermost shell, and it's a non-metal and it's a gas. So do remember each hydrogen has 1 electron with it. Now since both are non-metal, therefore they will never gain electron, they will share, and sharing shown be shown by this box sign. Okay, electrovalent by the bent arrow sign, whereas covalent by this box sign. Now you can see out here students, both of them are sharing 1 electron each to become duplet, because duplet is also a case of stability. So this hydrogen will share 2 electron to become duplet, even this hydrogen will share this 2 electron to become duplet. Okay, so since sharing of electron here is 1 each by both, therefore covalency will be 1. Earlier I talked about electrovalency when it is formed between metal and non-metal. Right now we are talking about both the non-metals. So by sharing they form covalent bond, they have covalency. And how many electrons they are sharing? 1 each. So therefore the covalency will be 1. Clear? Now similarly if you represent both with cross sign, that becomes cross structure. And if you represent one element with dot, the other with cross, that become dot cross structure. And in all the cases covalency will be 1. Why? Because both of them are sharing 1 electron each. Now we'll see the Lewis structure for oxygen. Oxygen is again a diatomic gas whose formula is O2. And do remember the atomic number of oxygen is 8. As a result, its configuration will be 2, 6. And 6 in the outermost shell is non-metal. Now, inside O2 there are 2 oxygen. And both of them are non-metal. So therefore, no one is going to lose, but they are going to share electrons. Okay. Now, let us make it for one oxygen. How many it has in the outermost shell? 6. So this is the one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for one oxygen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the other oxygen. Now since they have 6, how many each they require to become octet? 2. Therefore they will share 2 electrons. So this 2 electron will be shared and this 2 electron will be shared. So now if this is shared, this is octet. How check? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octet. For this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octet. So both the element became octet by sharing electrons. But in this case, how many electron is being shared by both oxygen? 2. Therefore, the covalency will be 2 in this case. Again, if you represent the electrons of each oxygen with the cross sign, that become cross structure. And if you represent one element with dot, the other element sign with cross electron, that become dot cross structure. Now we will see Lewis structure of nitrogen. Nitrogen atomic number is 7, and do remember nitrogen is also a diatomic gas, so formula will be N2. Okay, and nitrogen atomic number is 7, due to which its electronic configuration will be 2, 5. Again 5 in the outermost shell is non-metal. Having 1, 2, 3 is metal, 4, 5, 6, 7 is non-metal. Nitrogen has 7 in the outermost shell, 5 in the outermost shell, therefore it is a non-metal. Now let us make its Lewis structure. Nitrogen, in N2 there are 2 nitrogens, so make 2 nitrogens separately. Each nitrogen has 5 electrons, so make 5 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now since they have 5 each, they require 3 each to share to become octet. So these 3 and these 3 will be shared among them, so that nitrogen will become octet. And do remember, electrovalent bond we shown by bent arrow, whereas covalent bond you have to shown by a box sign. Now once 3 electron is shared, let us see this nitrogen becomes octet or not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octets. So both the nitrogen becomes octet. Now in this case, how many electron is being shared by each? 3. Therefore the covalency will be 3, because both the elements are sharing 3 electron each. Right now I have made Lewis electron cross structure. Here I made it dot, here I made it cross. So if you represent every element electron with dot both sides, that become dot structure. One with dot, the other with cross, that become dot cross structure. Okay, and the covalency of nitrogen will be 3, because both of them are sharing 3 electron each. Now we will see the Lewis structure for hydrogen chloride. The atomic number of hydrogen, if you see in that, is 1, and that of chlorine is 17. So I am going to show its Lewis structure now. So in HCl, atomic number of hydrogen is 1, so the electronic configuration will be 1, whereas chlorine is 17, so the electronic configuration will be 2, 8, 7. Hydrogen is a non-metal, do remember, and chlorine is also a non-metal, and since both are non-metal, they share their electrons to become octet. Okay. Now this hydrogen has 1 electron, chlorine has how many? 7 in the outermost shell. Hydrogen has 1 and chlorine has 7. Now hydrogen requires 1 more electron to become duplet, whereas chlorine requires 1 more electron to become octet. So they will share this electron. As this electron is shared, our hydrogen becomes duplet 1, 2, whereas our chlorine becomes octet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octet. Again in this event, the total number of electrons shared is 1 each. Therefore the covalency will be 1. And do remember, covalent bonds should be shown by the box sign, electrovalent by the bent arrow sign. Now if I represent both the electrons of hydrogen and chlorine with the cross sign, that become cross structure. If you represent one element with dot, the other with cross, or vice versa, that becomes your dot cross structure of HCl. Now we will see for water. Water formula is H2O, and inside water there is hydrogen and oxygen. Atomic number of hydrogen is 1, so the configuration will be 1. Oxygen is 8, so the electronic configuration will be 2, 6. And hydrogen is non-metal. Chlorine is also non-metal. Both being non-metal, they share their electrons. Now let us see their structure. In the formula, hydrogen is 2, oxygen is 1. So whichever is single, you keep it in the middle. And there are 2 hydrogen, keep it in the 2 sides. Now hydrogen has 1 electron in the outermost shell. This hydrogen also has 1 electron in the outermost shell. Whereas oxygen has 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 electron in the outermost shell. Now hydrogen requires 1 more electron to become duplet. Therefore it shares with this oxygen. Similarly, this hydrogen also requires 1 electron to become duplet. It will gain a share from this oxygen. As a result, both the hydrogen becomes duplet by the electrons of oxygen, whereas oxygen becomes octet by the electron of hydrogen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oxygen becomes octet. And in this event again, the number of electrons shared by oxygen is 2 and hydrogen is also 2. Therefore, the covalency will be 2. And I have shown you here the Lewis structure, dot cross structure of water. Now, how to make only dot structure? Represent this also with dot, this also with dot. Now, this becomes dot structure of water. The earlier was dot cross. Now, if you represent all the electron with the cross sign, that becomes your cross structure for water. Now we'll see for ammonia. Okay, the formula of ammonia is NH3. To remember, the formula of ammonia is NH3. Atomic number of nitrogen is 7. So the configuration will be 2, 5. Hydrogen is 1. So the configuration will be 1. Do remember, hydrogen is again non-metal. And our nitrogen is also non-metal because it has 5 in the outermost shell. And between non-metals, we get covalent bond. Now, again in this formula, if you see nitrogen is single, so keep it in the middle. And there are 3 hydrogen, keep it in the 3 sides. Now, hydrogen has how many in the outermost shell? 1. So make 1 electron for each hydrogen because it has 1 electron in the outermost shell. And our nitrogen has how many in the outermost shell? 5. Out of 5, 1 with this hydrogen, another 1 with this hydrogen, another 1 with this hydrogen. So out of 5, how many gone? 3 gone. So how many left? 2. So you make it like this. And both are non-metal, so they share their electrons. Both are non-metal, so they share their electrons. And in this way, each hydrogen becomes duplet by the electron of nitrogen, and nitrogen becomes octet by the electron, 1 electron each of the 3 hydrogen. So in this case, again, if you see, sharing of electron is taking place and both of them are sharing 3 electron each. Therefore, the covalency in this case will be 3 because nitrogen is sharing 3 electron of it, so covalency will be 3. Okay, if you represent again all the electron with the cross, that become cross structure. If you represent all the electron with the dot, it become dot structure for ammonia. Okay, now we go for methane. Methane formula is CH4, in which carbon atomic number is 6 and that of hydrogen is 1. So, methane formula is CH4, carbon atomic number is 6, so the configuration will be 2, 4, hydrogen 1, so the configuration will be 1. And do remember, carbon is also non-metal, hydrogen is also non-metal. And being both non-metal, they share electrons and form covalent bond. Now look out here. Who is single in the formula? Carbon, keep it in the center. How many hydrogen? 4, so keep it in the 4 sides. Done. Now, carbon has how many electrons in the outermost shell? 4. So 1 for this hydrogen, 1 to share with this hydrogen, 1 to share with this hydrogen, 1 to share with this hydrogen. Now, hydrogen has how many? 1 each. Hydrogen has 1 each because it has 1 in the outermost shell. Now, when this hydrogen share the electron with this electron of carbon, hydrogen becomes duplet, hydrogen becomes duplet, hydrogen become duplet and stable, hydrogen become duplet and stable. Whereas, by the electron of hydrogen, carbon becomes octet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, in this case, carbon is sharing total how many elements? Electrons? 4. Therefore, the covalency will be 4. Again, if you represent all the electrons here with cross sign, that become cross structure. But if you represent one element with dot, the other with cross. For example, I am making carbon with dot and hydrogen with cross. And this becomes your dot cross structure for methane, and the covalency will be 4. Now we will see for carbon tetrachloride. Now I am going to show you again the last one, the Lewis structure for carbon tetrachloride. The formula of carbon tetrachloride is CCl4. Do remember, carbon atomic number is 6. So the configuration will be 2, 4. Chlorine is 17. So the configuration will be 2, 8, 7. And do remember again, carbon is non-metal. Even chlorine is non-metal. Okay, and between non-metal, electron will be shared. So here again, who is single in the formula? Carbon. So make it in the center. And how many chlorines are there? 4. Keep it in the 4 sides. Okay, now carbon has how many in the outermost shell? 4. So make it 4, 1 each for each chlorine. So this is the 4 electrons of carbon. And chlorine has how many? 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for one chlorine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for another chlorine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for another chlorine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the other chlorine. Now, chlorine requires 1 electron to become octet because it is already having 7 with it. Therefore, it will share 1 electron from carbon. It will share 1 electron from carbon, 1 electron from carbon, 1 electron from carbon. So, as a result, our chlorine becomes octet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Octet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Octet. So on. Whereas our carbon becomes by the 1 electron each of chlorine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Octet. Now, in this case again, if you see, the total number of electron which is been shared is 4 by carbon. Therefore, its covalency is 4. Covalency of carbon will be, of this compound will be 4. Okay. Now, if you represent all the electrons with dot sign, that become dot structure. And if you represent one element with dot, the other with cross. For example, I am replacing the 4 electron of carbon by dot sign now. 4 electron of carbon. Now, if you see out here, this becomes dot cross structure of carbon tetrachloride. Okay, students, do remember now one thing. You need to remember the definition of electrovalent bond and covalent bond in this chapter, their properties for difference between and the Lewis structure. But do be very much alert for the Lewis structure. Atomic number will be provided to you. First, isolate whether it's metal or a non-metal. If it is metal and non-metal, you come to know that you have to make electrovalent bond shown by bent arrow. Okay, and arrow should be towards the one who is gaining. But if after electronic configuration, if you come to know that both are non-metals, that is covalent, and that is formed by sharing, and sharing should be shown by box sign. So today I discussed about electrovalent compound and covalent compound and the Lewis structure of them. Okay, in my next class I'll be coming with the type of covalent compound, that is polar covalent compound and non-polar covalent compound in my next class. Thank you for today. Stay home, be safe. Thank you very much.